we're going to conclude this episode by really quickly ranking each Guardians movie and briefly explaining why we're putting those in those spots. So we're going to start with our number 3 picks and then go number 2 and then finish out number 1. So I'm going to start with my number 3 pick, which is Guardians Volume 2. And
Same.
my main reasoning is I have to say this, it's still a strong film, one of the better ones of the MCU, but I think some of the plot got a little slow for me at times, if that makes sense. The pacing wasn't as good as the other ones for me, and I don't know, I just didn't like the ride as much as the other two movies. Okay, my number 2 is Guardians Volume 1. So the first
Oh.
Guardians of the Galaxy movie.
Hot take.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about number 1 now. This is a great group superhero movie that I think was really tough because, like I said before, comedy and drama to balance it, super difficult, and I thought it did it excellently.
Yeah, my number 2 is going to be because my number 2 is actually going to be Volume 3 because I don't tend to have too much recency bias. I think it's probably like I guess it's like a slightly more like conclusive kind of movie, but at the same time, I do it has a couple of the MCU flaws that have that, but not quite as bad as they have been lately. And again, like I feel like it would need to kind of warm up on me for it to like maybe top the first one, which it like I arguably does, but that's kind of where I am right now.
Yeah, mine is going to be Volume 3 for my number 2. I do quite love it, but it's not one I'll defend to the death. Like, when someone criticizes Volume 3, I'm like, oh yeah, no, I get that. I understand what
Yeah.
you're saying there. So, that, like, Volume 1, though, oof, boy, I'll
Volume-
if anyone comes after that one. That is, Volume 1, I'll just, like, hijack that because that's obviously my number 1. It's a miracle of a movie.
So my number one is obviously Guardians Volume 3, which we already kind of talked about. Let's go into Guardians 1, which is Connor and Sean's number 1 pick.
It's a miracle of a movie, like really a miracle of a movie. It's in
It
my
shouldn't have worked.
like Marvel top 5. Watching like Volume 3, and I was just like grateful that it was still around, and it just like made me just happy and bubbly inside.
Yeah, and it came at such a moment. It came during phase 2 in particular. So we hadn't quite seen something really like this in Marvel. There had obviously been the humor and some of the kookiness, but not quite as much as it was here, and that was part of the charm of Guardians Volume 3. It was a different direction for Marvel, because as soon as I saw that first trailer when I was a kid and it first came out, I was like, this is gonna be an interesting pivot for Marvel, whether it works or not. And it did. What a bunch of a-holes.
Part of that pivot being the guy from Parks and Rec was the star of this movie, which I think has to be said. This Chris Pratt showcase, in terms of like his big budget showcase, was awesome. Like I did not see this coming from the Parks and Rec guy. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah, he was definitely more like utilized in volumes 1 and 2 in particular as well.
Yeah.
So you have a somewhat like more clear leader of the Guardians in that case, and plus it's just such a well done, one of the better comic book movies in a minute. Even though I will say there are a couple of editing issues in some of the action sequences, which kind of isn't really a problem with the film as much as it is with most American action films. Like during the fight scene between Gamora and Nebula, there's a particularly bad edit when she kicks her in the face. And I was like, Hong Kong cinema would not do this.
Yeah. I think too, the fact that it came after Avengers, I was a little bit skeptical when the
Yeah.
first movie came out, and it just surpassed every single
Yeah,
expectation
and
I had.
because that end to phase one is like at that point that was the benchmark for
Yeah.
Marvel. This was it. I know it's 11 years ago already. It's already and it's not that long ago historically, but it feels like an eternity since we've had like kind of relatively self-contained Marvel movies leading up to that big moment of the Avengers. And so where do we go from here? And then all of a sudden, James Gunn is hired to direct. Who did he had just done Super and
Yep.
Slither, which were both like kind of ironic
Cold hits.
genre
Yeah.
films. But so we were definitely going to get something quirkier, but we weren't sure if he could, revive these kind of obscure characters from the comics, one of which is a talking raccoon and the other one's a talking tree who says, "I am Groot" the whole time.
Yeah,
And
no, I
as well as a
think this,
mentally
yeah.
handicapped big guy named
Yeah,
Drax.
and I think it'd be hard to argue that I think this first Guardians movie has the best music drops, the
Oh,
best
yes.
needle drops
by
in this
far.
franchise.
By far. I think the soundtrack in this might be certainly one of the more iconic film soundtracks in this century. Like, who hasn't listened to the Awesome Mix at least 3 times?
It is nuts that I like actually downloaded that from iTunes like a freaking fed. Like I didn't even like illegally take it. I was like, no, I'm buying this.
My brother gets vinyl sometimes. He got the Guardians vinyl
That's gotta be
he
an
has
awesome
good taste
vinyl.
in music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that works probably best on an analog
Oh, yeah,
format,
definitely.
if anything. And that
Yeah.
was also one I kind of warmed up to the more times I watched it.
Mhm.
Because the first time I saw it, I enjoyed it, but I was like not quite sure. And then now that's a film like whenever
Yeah.
it comes on, I don't mind putting it on.
And it's so tricky because it is like not even just like a talking raccoon and a talking tree. There's like several alien races and a war, and they're trying to pack all of this in, and they do it with like a clever limited amount of exposition. So if you really try to think during it, it's tough, but in general, it's still like a rockin' good time if you just accept, okay, the Bliblicons are invading Bliblikistan, and then, you're fine with it. And you just kind of enjoy that and buckle up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we are Groot.
Yeah, and then we are.
We are Groot. Well, that about wraps up our rankings for this episode today. I just want to thank Sean again for hopping on this episode. It was really fun talking to you about Guardians.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. This was a great time.
Thank you. Do you have any plug that you want to give for our followers to maybe go follow you on Instagram, TikTok?
Of course, Math Teacher Movies on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter, but I'm not really on Twitter that much. I try, but it's just not great. And then also the Guy at the Movies podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes come out every Monday.
Awesome. Yeah, guys, I'm not going to lie. Some of his TikToks make me laugh, and I'm in public areas, and I don't want to laugh at that time, and I start cracking up. So this guy has some great, and also he does reviews on movies that are not typically seen.
Yeah, I go
you were
deep in the
doing-
Criterion channel.
Yes.
That's
Love to
awesome,
hear it.
dude. Yeah, keep it up because it's good.
Thank you. Yeah.
Also on that note, please subscribe to Before Showtime on either YouTube or go follow us on TikTok if that's more your preferred type of media. Because, yeah, this is what we're going to do for the future. Try to get as many guests that are willing to be on here and discuss movies. So thanks a lot for making it this far. And catch you next time on Before Showtime with Connor and Marcelo.